The first gunshot scattered the mourning doves from the roof of Rose Sinclair's farmhouse, sending them fluttering into the clear Montana sky of 1873. She froze at her kitchen table, coffee cup halfway to her lips, when the second shot rang out. It wasn't hunting season, and nobody fired warning shots at dawn unless they meant business. Rose set down her cup, the dark liquid sloshing over the rim as her hands trembled. Through the window, she could see a cloud of dust rising from the road leading to her property. 3 riders approached, and she recognized the center figure immediately: Harold Prescott, owner of Silver Pine Bank and the man who held the mortgage on her late father's ranch. "Not today," she whispered, grabbing her father's shotgun from above the fireplace. At 25, Rose had been managing the Whispering Pines Ranch alone for nearly 2 years since her father's passing. The drought had made the last season brutal, and the loan payments impossible. Rose stepped onto her porch, shotgun lowered but visible, her auburn hair catching fire in the morning sun. "Miss Sinclair," Prescott called as the men pulled their horses to a stop. "Lovely morning for a visit, wouldn't you agree?" "State your business, Mr. Prescott," Rose replied coldly. "And explain why you're firing shots on my property." Prescott, a portly man with a waxed mustache and expensive suit that never seemed to gather dust, smiled without warmth. "Just clearing my throat, so to speak. I've come about the outstanding debt." The 2 men flanking him, his clerk, a nervous young man named Edwin, and his hired muscle, a brute called Thatcher, shifted uncomfortably. "I have until the end of the month," Rose said firmly. "That was our agreement." Prescott pulled an envelope from his breast pocket. "I'm afraid there's been a change. The bank's board has instructed me to call in certain, risky investments immediately." "This isn't an investment to you," Rose said, her voice rising. "This is my home. My father built this place with his own hands." "Your father should have managed his affairs better," Prescott replied, his tone suddenly sharp. "The drought wasn't his fault, but gambling away his savings certainly was. You have 3 days, Miss Sinclair. Then we'll be forced to initiate foreclosure proceedings." A few miles away, Adam Northcott guided his horse along the ridge overlooking Silver Pine Valley. At 30, he'd seen enough of the country to know when he'd found somewhere worth staying. The valley, with its pine-covered mountains and the silver ribbon of the Clearwater River cutting through lush grazing land, felt like it could be home. He'd spent 10 years driving cattle, fighting in skirmishes against raiders, and working whatever honest jobs he could find from Texas to Montana. The small pouch of gold dust and coins in his saddlebag represented everything he had to show for it enough, he hoped, to start something of his own. His horse, a dun gelding named Traveler, suddenly raised his head and pricked his ears forward. Adam followed the animal's gaze and spotted 3 riders leaving a small ranch below. Something about the scene caught his attention: the woman standing rigid on the porch, shotgun in hand, watching the men depart. "What do you think, Traveler? Trouble down there?" Adam patted the horse's neck. "Not our business, I reckon." But as he turned to continue along the ridge, the woman below suddenly sank to her knees on the porch steps, her face in her hands. Something about her despair struck him like a physical blow. "Damn it all," he muttered, turning Traveler toward the path leading down. "Just a quick check is all." Rose hadn't meant to break down. She prided herself on her strength, especially since her father's death. But Prescott's ultimatum had shattered the fragile hope she'd been clutching. 3 days wasn't enough time to raise the $200 she owed, not when she had barely $5 to her name. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her hastily wipe her eyes. Visitors were rare, and she couldn't afford to appear vulnerable. Standing, she squinted against the sun to make out the lone rider approaching from the north ridge, not the direction Prescott had gone. The stranger rode easily, his posture relaxed but alert. As he drew closer, she could see he wore a faded blue shirt under a brown leather vest, dusty denims, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. A gun belt was strapped around his waist, but that was common enough in these parts. "Morning, madam," he called, stopping a respectful distance away. "Hope I'm not intruding." "That depends on your business," Rose replied, one hand still near her shotgun. "Adam Northcott," he introduced himself, removing his hat to reveal tousled dark hair and eyes the color of the Montana sky. "Just passing through and thought I'd check if everything was all right. Saw some men leaving in quite a hurry." "Everything's fine," Rose said automatically. Adam's gaze swept over the ranch, the weathered barn that needed painting, the broken fence posts waiting to be replaced, the small herd of cattle visible in the distance. "Nice spread you've got," he said. "You run it alone?" "I do now," she answered, then hesitated. Something in his straightforward manner made her continue. "Rose Sinclair, this was my father's place. He passed 2 years ago." Adam nodded solemnly. "My condolences, Miss Sinclair." An awkward silence fell between them until Rose cleared her throat. "If you're looking for work, Mr. Northcott, I'm afraid I can't hire any hands at present." A smile touched his lips, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "Actually, I was hoping to buy some supplies, been on the trail a while." Rose relaxed slightly. "I can spare some flour and coffee. Maybe some salt pork. Town's 15 miles east if you need more." "Much obliged." Adam dismounted, tying Traveler to the hitching post. "Mind if I water my horse?" "Help yourself," Rose gestured toward the well. "There's a trough around the side." As Adam led his horse away, Rose returned inside to gather the supplies. Her pantry was meager, but hospitality was a sacred duty in these parts, even when facing ruin. She wrapped bread, cheese, and salt pork in brown paper, then measured coffee beans into a small sack. When she returned to the porch, Adam was examining her corral fence, running his hand along a broken rail. "Cedar doesn't last as long as people think," he remarked. "Needs replacing every few years in this climate." "I'm aware," Rose said, perhaps more sharply than intended. "There are many things that need attention." Adam turned, seeming to sense her distress. "Those men who left, they weren't friends, were they?" Rose hesitated, then sighed. "The bank, they're calling in my father's loan early. I have 3 days before they take everything." She hadn't meant to reveal so much to a stranger, but something about his calm presence invited confidence. "Banks don't usually change terms without reason," Adam observed. "Prescott wants my land," Rose said bitterly. "The railway survey came through last month. There's talk they'll build a spur line through the valley, and my property sits right where they'd need to put a station." Adam whistled softly. "That would make this land worth a small fortune." "To everyone but me, apparently," Rose handed him the supplies. "That'll be 50 cents. Adam reached into his pocket and produced a silver dollar. "Keep the change. For the water." Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Rose pulled back quickly, unused to contact with anyone besides the occasional tradesman or neighboring rancher. "You shouldn't travel these parts alone, Mr. Northcott," she said, changing the subject. "There've been reports of bandits targeting solitary riders." "I can handle myself," Adam replied, loading the supplies into his saddlebags, "but I appreciate the warning." He mounted Traveler with the easy grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. "How much, I beg your pardon?" Rose asked, confused. "The loan, how much do you owe?" Rose stiffened. "That's not your concern." Adam held up his hands in a placating gesture. "Just making conversation, Miss Sinclair. No offense intended." $200, she answered after a moment. "Plus another 50 in interest that wasn't supposed to come due until year's end." Adam whistled again. "That's a hefty sum." "It is when you don't have it," Rose agreed, suddenly tired of pretending. "Good day, Mr. Northcott. Safe travels." He tipped his hat, studying her face as if committing it to memory. "Good day, Miss Sinclair. I hope your situation improves." Rose watched him ride away, telling herself the hollow feeling in her chest was just hunger. She had work to do and no time for distractions, especially not handsome cowboys with kind eyes and gentle manners. The next morning dawned crisp and clear. Rose had spent the previous day inventorying everything she owned, hoping to find something valuable enough to sell. The results were disheartening. Her father's pocket watch, her mother's cameo brooch, and 3 head of cattle she might be able to drive to market altogether worth perhaps $75. Nowhere near enough. She was spreading feed for the chickens when she spotted a rider approaching from town. Not Prescott this time, but Sheriff Malcolm Davis, a gruff but fair man who had been friends with her father. "Morning, Rose," he called, dismounting stiffly. At 60, the sheriff moved more slowly than in his younger days. "Sheriff," she nodded. "Coffee." "Wouldn't say no," he answered, following her to the porch. "Beautiful day." "Let's not pretend this is a social call," Rose said, pouring him a cup. "What brings you out here?" Davis sipped his coffee, looking uncomfortable. "Heard about Prescott's ultimatum. Wanted to see if there was anything I could do." "Unless you've got $200 you don't need, I don't see how," Rose replied. "Don't have that kind of money," Davis admitted. "But I did want to warn you, Prescott's been talking all over town about how he'll own this place by week's end. Even had Edwin draw up sale notices for the land." Rose's hands clenched around her coffee cup. "He's that certain I'll fail." "It ain't right," Davis shook his head. "Your daddy helped half the folks in this valley get established, Prescott included. Man's got no gratitude." "Gratitude doesn't fill bank vaults," Rose said bitterly. "I appreciate you coming out, Sheriff, but unless you've got a miracle in your pocket, there's not much to be done." Davis set down his cup. "There might be one option. The cattle drive from the Henderson spread is due through tomorrow. They'll need hands for the push to Billings. Pays good $1 a day plus found." "And who would look after things here?" Rose asked. "Besides, they wouldn't hire a woman." "Probably not," Davis admitted. "Was just a thought." After the sheriff left, Rose walked her property line, trying to memorize every tree, every rock, every bend in the creek that had been part of her life. The thought of strangers owning it, changing it to suit the railroad's needs, made her physically ill. By afternoon, she had resolved to ride to neighboring ranches, seeking any work or loan that might help. She was saddling her mare when she spotted dust rising from the road again. "Now what?" she muttered, reaching for her shotgun out of habit. To her surprise, it was Adam Northcott returning, this time leading a packhorse laden with supplies behind Traveler. "Afternoon, Miss Sinclair," he called, raising his hat. "Hope you don't mind me stopping by again." Rose approached warily. "Mr. Northcott. Didn't expect to see you back this way. Thought I might ask about grazing rights," he said easily, dismounting. "Looking to stay in these parts a spell, and your land has the best water access I've seen." Rose frowned. "I'm not in a position to make any arrangements at present, given my situation." Adam nodded, unloading a sack of tools from the packhorse. "About that, I was thinking maybe we could help each other out." "How so?" Rose asked, curiosity overcoming her caution. "I need a place to stay while I get my bearings in the territory. You need repairs done." He gestured at the sagging barn door. "I'm handy with tools and don't mind hard work. Thought maybe I could camp here, help with some repairs in exchange for grazing my horses." Rose studied him suspiciously. "Why would you do that?" Adam shrugged. "Like I said, best water access around, and—" He hesitated, then continued honestly, "Seems like you could use the help, and I've been traveling alone too long. Would be nice to have a purpose for a few days." Rose considered his offer. An extra pair of hands would be welcome, though it wouldn't solve her financial crisis. Still, having the place in better repair might attract a better price if she was forced to sell portions of the land. "You can use the old bunkhouse," she decided. "It's not much, but it's got a roof and a stove." "More than I'm used to," Adam smiled. "I'll get settled and start on that corral fence before sundown if that suits you." "Suits me fine," Rose nodded. "But Mr. Northcott?" "Yes, madam, don't get too comfortable. I can't promise how long I'll have this place." His eyes held hers for a moment. "Understood, and Miss Sinclair, it's just Adam." True to his word, Adam began working on the corral fence immediately after settling his belongings in the bunkhouse. Rose watched surreptitiously from the kitchen window as he removed the rotted cedar rails and replaced them with sturdy new lumber he'd brought along. His efficiency impressed her. He clearly knew ranching work. By sunset, half the corral was repaired, and he'd also fixed the broken hinge on the barn door that had been squeaking for months. Rose prepared a simple supper of beans, cornbread, and coffee, then hesitated before setting the table for two. It had been so long since she'd shared a meal with anyone, the routine felt foreign. Still, it would be inhospitable not to offer, and Adam had certainly earned a hot meal. She called him in from the barn, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened when he smiled his thanks, removing his hat before entering her kitchen. "Smells wonderful," he said, washing his hands in the basin she'd prepared. "It's nothing fancy," Rose replied, filling their plates. "Home cooking's always fancy to a man who's been on the trail," Adam assured her, waiting for her to sit before taking his place. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the awkwardness gradually easing as hunger took precedence over social discomfort. "You've done ranch work before," Rose observed finally. Adam nodded. "Born on a cattle spread in West Texas, left when I was 20, worked everywhere from Kansas to Dakota Territory since." "What brings you to Montana?" she asked. He seemed to consider his answer carefully. "Heard good things about the territory, land still available for those willing to work it, games plentiful. Fewer troublemakers than some places I've been." "You're looking to settle then?" "Been thinking on it," he admitted. 10 years is a long time to live from a saddle. "Might be nice to have something of my own." Rose understood that sentiment all too well. "It's not an easy life." "Few worthwhile things are," Adam replied, then changed the subject. "That banker who was here yesterday, he say why he's calling in your loan early?" Rose stiffened slightly. "He claims the bank's board instructed him to reduce risky investments." "And you don't believe that?" "I believe he wants my land for the railway," Rose said frankly. "And I believe he's counting on me failing." Adam's expression darkened. "Man takes advantage of a woman alone, he's no gentleman." "Prescott's a businessman first," Rose said, rising to clear their plates, "and I'm a bad investment." "I wouldn't say that," Adam's voice was quiet but certain. "This place has good bones, right management, it could thrive again." "Perhaps," Rose conceded, "but that takes capital I don't have." "What would you do?" Adam asked. "If you could keep it, I mean." Rose paused, surprised by the question. No one had asked what she wanted in a long time. "I'd diversify," she said slowly. "The cattle are fine, but they're vulnerable to drought. I'd plant more alfalfa, maybe try wheat on the north section. Get some sheep too, though the cattlemen around here might not approve." "Smart thinking," Adam nodded. "Less reliance on any one thing." "My father always said all your eggs in one basket makes for hungry days when the basket breaks." Rose smiled faintly at the memory. "Wise man," Adam observed. When he'd helped her wash the dishes and excused himself to the bunkhouse, Rose found herself standing in her empty kitchen, feeling oddly bereft. Adam Northcott was kind, capable, and dangerously easy to talk to, exactly the sort of distraction she couldn't afford right now. Yet as she prepared for bed, she couldn't help glancing out her window toward the soft glow of light from the bunkhouse, wondering what had really brought this man to her door. The next morning, Adam was already working when Rose emerged at dawn. He'd moved on to the water trough, replacing cracked boards and recaulking the seams. His shirt was draped over the fence as he worked in the cool morning air, and Rose found herself pausing to observe the play of muscles across his tanned back, before catching herself and hurrying to the chicken coop. By midday, the temperature had climbed, and Rose brought a pitcher of cold water to where Adam was now mending the roof of the storage shed. "You'll work yourself into heat stroke," she called up to him. Adam grinned down at her, his face streaked with sweat and dust. "Worth it for a drink of your well water, sweetest I've tasted in 3 territories." He climbed down the ladder with agile grace, accepting the dipper she offered. "Thank you kindly. You've done more in a day and a half than I could manage in a month," Rose admitted. "I appreciate it." "Happy to help," Adam replied, his eyes holding hers a moment longer than necessary before he drained the dipper. The moment was broken by the sound of approaching riders. 3 of them, coming fast from the direction of town. "Expecting company?" Adam asked, reaching casually for his shirt. "No," Rose said, dread settling in her stomach. "It's probably Prescott again." Sure enough, the banker and his 2 companions pulled up in a cloud of dust. Prescott's eyes narrowed at the sight of Adam standing beside Rose. "Miss Sinclair," Prescott tipped his hat insincerely. "I see you found yourself some assistance, Mr. Prescott," Rose acknowledged coldly. "You're a day early." "Just checking on my investment," Prescott replied smoothly. His gaze shifted to Adam. "And you are?" "Adam Northcott." Adam offered no further explanation, but Rose noticed he'd positioned himself slightly in front of her. Prescott assessed him with obvious distaste. "Well, Miss Sinclair, I hope you're preparing to vacate. Unless, of course, you've managed to secure $250 overnight." "I told you I have until tomorrow," Rose said firmly. "Indeed, though I wouldn't get your hopes up," Prescott smiled unpleasantly. "Edwin here has already begun the paperwork. We'll return tomorrow at noon." He turned his horse, then paused. "Oh, and you might want to inform your friend that the property won't be available for hired hands after tomorrow." After they'd ridden away, Adam turned to Rose. "Charming fellow." "He wasn't always like this," Rose sighed. "My father used to say Prescott was decent enough until he got a taste of real money. The bank was just a small operation until silver was discovered in the mountains. Now he fancies himself a power broker." "Men reveal their true character when opportunity knocks," Adam observed. "Some rise to it, others fall beneath it." Rose glanced at him curiously. "You sound like you've seen your share of both." "That I have," Adam nodded grimly. "More of the latter than I care to recall." They worked together through the afternoon, Rose tending to her livestock while Adam completed repairs on the storage shed. By evening, the place looked better than it had in months, though Rose couldn't escape the bitter knowledge that her improved property might soon belong to Prescott. After supper, they sat on the porch as twilight painted the valley in soft purple shadows. Rose had brought out her father's old checkerboard, and they played in companionable silence broken only by the occasional comment about strategy. "King me," Adam said, sliding his piece to the far row. Rose complied, then made her move. "You never said where you learned ranching." "My father's place, like I mentioned," Adam replied, studying the board. 800 acres of the most stubborn land God ever created. Nothing grew easy, nothing came without a fight. What happened to it?" Rose asked. A shadow crossed Adam's face. "War came. My father and older brother joined up with the Confederacy. Neither came home. By the time I returned from fighting, the taxes had piled up. Bank took it." He moved his piece. "Your move." Rose understood then why he might sympathize with her situation. "I'm sorry," Adam shrugged. "Long time ago now, taught me not to get too attached to things that can be taken away." He looked up at her. "Though some things are worth fighting for." Something in his gaze made Rose's heart beat faster, and she looked away, focusing on the checkerboard. "Your move again." Later, lying in bed, Rose tried to sort through her tumultuous feelings. In just 2 days, Adam had become a presence she'd grown accustomed to. His quiet competence, his dry humor, the way he seemed to understand her determination to save her home without making her feel pitied. Tomorrow it would all end, one way or another. The thought left an emptiness she wasn't prepared for. Morning came too soon. Rose dressed carefully in her best skirt and shirtwaist. If she was to lose her home, she would face it with dignity. When she entered the kitchen, she was surprised to find Adam already there, coffee brewing on the stove. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said. "Thought you could use a hot cup before." He trailed off. "Before Prescott arrives," Rose finished for him. "Thank you." They shared breakfast quietly, the weight of the impending confrontation hanging between them. Rose had counted her money 3 times in the night, $68.42. Not even a third of what she needed. As they finished eating, Adam cleared his throat. "Rose, I've been thinking, maybe there's a way." He was interrupted by a knock at the door. Rose's heart sank. Prescott was early again, clearly eager to claim his prize. But when she opened the door, it wasn't the banker standing there, but Sheriff Davis, looking troubled. "Sheriff," Rose frowned. "What brings you by so early?" "Message came for you," Davis said, handing her an envelope. "Ryder brought it from Billings last night, said it was urgent." Rose accepted the envelope with trembling fingers. "Thank you." "I'll wait," Davis said, glancing curiously at Adam, who had appeared in the doorway behind Rose. Rose opened the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. As she read, her knees weakened and she reached blindly for support. Adam's hand caught her elbow, steadying her. "Rose, what is it?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "It's from the bank in Billings," she said, her voice hollow. "My loan, it's been paid in full." Adam's expression remained carefully neutral. "Paid? By whom?" "It doesn't say," Rose frowned at the paper. "Just that the outstanding balance was received yesterday and the mortgage is now satisfied." She looked up at Davis. "This can't be right, there must be some mistake." Davis shrugged. "Don't know anything about it, but if the Billings Bank says it's paid, then Prescott can't touch your land." Rose's mind raced. Who would pay her debt? She had no wealthy relatives, no secret benefactors. The only person who might have cared enough was her father, and he was long dead. "I should ride to Billings," she said. "Find out who did this." "That's a 2-day journey," Adam pointed out. "Maybe deal with Prescott first, he's due here at noon." Rose nodded distractedly. "You're right, I need to show him this." Davis took his leave, promising to spread word in town that Rose's property was no longer in jeopardy. After he'd gone, Rose turned to Adam, still clutching the letter. "I don't understand," she said. "Who would do this?" Adam busied himself clearing the breakfast dishes. "Someone who cares about you, I'd imagine." "I don't have anyone like that," Rose insisted. "Everyone I know is as hardscrabble as I am." Adam said nothing, but there was something in his avoidance of her gaze that made Rose study him more carefully. His movements were too deliberate, his attention too focused on the simple task of washing plates. "Adam," she said slowly, "do you know something about this?" He finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Maybe the details aren't important, maybe you should just be thankful." Understanding dawned suddenly, leaving her breathless. "It was you," she whispered. "You paid my debt." Adam dried his hands on a towel, not confirming or denying. "But how?" Rose persisted. "Why would you do that for a stranger? You're not exactly a stranger anymore," Adam said quietly. $250 is a fortune," Rose said, her voice rising. "No one carries that kind of money, especially not a drifting cowboy," Adam sighed. "I told you I was looking to settle, had money saved, was going to buy land of my own. So you spent your savings on my mortgage instead." Rose asked incredulously. "That makes no sense." "Maybe not to you," Adam replied, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his tone. "I can't accept this," Rose declared, slapping the letter down on the table. "It's too much. I won't be indebted to someone I barely know." "It's not a debt," Adam said firmly. "It's a gift or an investment if that sits better with you." "An investment in what?" Rose demanded. "In something worth saving," Adam answered simply. Rose stared at him, conflicting emotions warring within her. Gratitude, confusion, suspicion, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. "Why?" she asked again, softer this time. Adam crossed the room to stand before her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes. "Because I've seen too many good people lose everything to men like Prescott," he said. "Because this land deserves someone who loves it the way you do," he paused. "And because from the moment I saw you standing on this porch with your shotgun, something told me you were worth knowing better." Rose felt tears threatening and blinked rapidly to hold them back. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Adam assured her. "Just keep your home, make it thrive like you planned." "And you?" Rose asked. "What will you do now?" Adam glanced out the window at the valley bathed in morning light. "Thought I might stick around if that's all right with you. Still need a place of my own eventually, but no rush." Rose realized he was offering her space-time to process what had happened, to decide how she felt about his extraordinary gesture without pressure. "The bunkhouse is yours for as long as you need it," she said softly, "and I could still use help with the ranch." His smile warmed her more than the morning sun streaming through the windows. Then it settled. When Prescott arrived at noon, accompanied not just by Edwin and Thatcher, but also by two other men Rose didn't recognize, his triumphant expression faltered at the sight of Rose and Adam waiting calmly on the porch. "Miss Sinclair," he began pompously. "I trust you're prepared to, Mr. Prescott," Rose interrupted, stepping forward with the letter from Billings. "I believe our business is concluded. My loan has been paid in full." Prescott snatched the letter, his face darkening as he read. "This is preposterous." "Who would?" His eyes darted to Adam, narrowing with sudden suspicion. "Who are you really, Northcott?" "Just a man who appreciates good land and good people," Adam replied evenly, his hand resting casually near his holster. Prescott crumpled the letter in his fist. "This changes nothing in the long term, Miss Sinclair. The railway is coming. This land will be needed. One way or another, you'll find yourself unable to hold on to it." "Is that a threat, Mr. Prescott?" Adam asked quietly, his relaxed posture belying the steel in his voice. Prescott blanched, seeming to recognize something dangerous in Adam's eyes. "Merely a prediction. Come, gentlemen, we have other business to attend to." As they rode away, Rose let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "He's not finished trying." "No," Adam agreed. "Men like that rarely give up easily, but he'll have to find another approach now." Rose turned to him, suddenly overcome with the magnitude of what he'd done. "I still can't believe you did this. Your entire savings." Adam shrugged. "Money can be earned again. Some things can't be replaced." That evening, after a day spent in the pleasant routine of ranch work, they sat again on the porch. The burden that had weighed on Rose for months had lifted, leaving her feeling almost light-headed with relief and gratitude. "I want to repay you," she said suddenly. "Not all at once, of course, but over time." Adam shook his head. "That's not necessary." "It is to me," Rose insisted. "I won't feel right otherwise." Adam considered her for a moment. "If it matters that much to you, we could work something out, maybe a partnership of sorts." "Partnership?" Rose echoed. "I still want land of my own eventually," Adam explained. "But starting from scratch is hard. What if I continue helping you get this place back to full production? We split the profits once expenses are covered. In time, my share would repay what I put in." Rose thought about it. The arrangement made practical sense, and having Adam's help would certainly improve the ranch's prospects. But there was something else in his suggestion, a commitment to stay, to build something together that both thrilled and terrified her. "That seems fair," she said finally. "Though I still feel I'm getting the better deal," Adam smiled. "I wouldn't be so sure about that." The days stretched into weeks as spring blossomed fully across the valley. Adam proved to be everything Rose could have hoped for in a partner, hardworking, knowledgeable, and respectful of her position as the ranch's owner despite his financial stake. Together they repaired fences, tended the cattle, and planted the alfalfa fields Rose had dreamed of. Adam even helped her acquire a small flock of sheep, carefully negotiating with a rancher in the next county to avoid inflaming local cattlemen's prejudices against the woolly animals. They fell into an easy rhythm, sharing meals, planning improvements, and gradually revealing more of their histories to each other. Rose learned that Adam had fought reluctantly for the Confederacy out of family loyalty rather than conviction, and had spent years afterward trying to atone for what he'd seen and done during those dark days. Adam discovered that beneath Rose's practical exterior lay an educated mind that treasured poetry and cherished dreams of seeing the great cities of the East someday. Her father had insisted she receive schooling in Helena for several years, an unusual priority for a frontier rancher that had given Rose a broader perspective than many of her neighbors. One evening in late May, they were returning from inspecting the north pasture when a spring thunderstorm overtook them. They raced for the shelter of an old line shack, arriving just as the heavens opened. That came up fast, Adam observed, shaking water from his hat as they huddled in the tiny one-room structure. Rose wrung out her soaked hair, laughing. Welcome to Montana Spring. If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. Lightning flashed, illuminating the small space and throwing Adam's features into sharp relief. Rose found herself studying him openly, the strong line of his jaw, the way his wet shirt clung to broad shoulders, the gentle humor in his eyes as he caught her gaze. "What?" he asked, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Rose felt warmth rise to her cheeks but didn't look away. "I was just thinking how different everything is from 2 months ago, how close I came to losing all this." She gestured vaguely, encompassing not just the ranch but perhaps something more. Adam stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "And now I have hope again," she said softly. "Because of you." Thunder rumbled as Adam reached up to brush a strand of wet hair from her face, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Rose," he murmured, his voice rough. "I need to tell you something." Rose's heart hammered in her chest. "Yes." "When I paid your mortgage," he began, "I told myself it was just about doing what was right, helping someone who deserved it." His hand dropped to his side. "But that wasn't the whole truth." Rose waited, barely breathing. "The truth is, from the moment I saw you standing on that porch, shotgun in hand, I couldn't get you out of my mind," Adam admitted. "I didn't plan to care this much this fast." Rose felt dizzy with the confirmation of feelings she'd been trying to deny in herself. "Adam, he shook his head. "You don't need to say anything. I know it's too soon, that you barely know me still. I just wanted you to understand why I did what I did. It wasn't charity or pity. It was because I saw something in you worth everything I had." The raw honesty in his voice broke something open inside Rose. Without analyzing or questioning, she closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his. Adam froze for a heartbeat, then his arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as he returned the kiss with gentle intensity. Rose felt as though she were falling and flying simultaneously, her senses filled with the scent of rain on his skin, the strength of his embrace, the tenderness of his touch. When they finally parted, both breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "That was worth waiting for," he whispered. Rose laughed softly, feeling lightheaded with joy and the strange new certainty blossoming inside her. "I'm not usually so forward." "I certainly hope not," Adam teased, brushing his lips against hers again briefly. "I'd hate to think you go around kissing every cowboy who pays your mortgage." Rose swatted his arm, then grew serious. "Adam, I don't know what happens next. This is all new territory for me." "For me too," he assured her. "We don't need to rush anything. We have time now." They stayed in the lined shack until the storm passed, talking, sharing occasional kisses, and beginning to imagine a future neither had dared hope for just months before. When they returned to the ranch house, damp but glowing with newfound understanding, Rose felt as though she were seeing her home through new eyes. The possibilities seemed endless now, not just for the land, but for her heart as well. Summer arrived in earnest, bringing long days of sunshine and hard work. The partnership between Rose and Adam flourished, both professionally and personally. They were careful to maintain propriety. Adam continued living in the bunkhouse, and they kept their growing relationship discreet when dealing with neighbors or townsfolk. But in private moments, walking along the creek at sunset or sitting on the porch after supper, they allowed themselves to explore the deep connection that had formed between them. Adam proved to be a patient suitor, respectful of Rose's initial hesitancy after years of independence. "I never thought I'd feel this way," Rose confessed one evening as they watched fireflies dance above the meadow grass. "After Father died, I was so focused on survival that I locked everything else away." Adam squeezed her hand gently. "Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it." "Is that what brought you here?" Rose asked. "Surprise?" Adam's expression grew thoughtful. "Maybe providence is a better word. I wasn't looking for you, but somehow I needed to find you anyway." Rose leaned her head against his shoulder, content in a way she'd never imagined possible. I'm glad you did. Not everything was idyllic, however. Prescott continued his campaign to acquire the Whispering Pines Ranch by other means. When direct financial pressure failed, he began spreading rumors in town that Rose had secured her mortgage payment through dubious means, hinting at improper relationships with wealthy cattlemen from neighboring counties. The gossip reached Rose through Sarah Miller, the shopkeeper's wife, during a supply run to town in early July. Don't let it trouble you, dear, Sarah said kindly after reluctantly repeating what she'd heard. Most folks don't believe a word of it. We all know what kind of man Prescott really is. Rose maintained her composure until she'd loaded her purchases and left town, but tears of anger and humiliation burned her eyes as she drove the wagon home. The unfairness of it cut deeply, that a man could attempt to ruin her reputation simply because she'd foiled his plans. Adam found her in the barn that evening, aggressively mucking out stalls with more force than necessary. Rose, he approached cautiously, sensing her distress. What happened in town, she told him about Prescott's rumors, her voice tight with controlled fury. 15 years my family has lived here. My father helped build that town, and now they whisper about me as if I were some. Hey, Adam caught her hands, stilling her frantic movement. The people who matter know the truth. It's not right, Rose said, tears finally spilling over. Why can't he just leave us alone? Adam pulled her into his arms, holding her while she released the pent-up frustration. Men like Prescott can't stand being thwarted, he said quietly. Especially not by a woman. What do we do? Rose asked, her voice muffled against his chest. Adam stroked her hair gently. We keep building what we've started. Show everyone that we're here to stay. Eventually, Prescott will find another target. But Adam wasn't as confident as he appeared. Later that night, after Rose had gone to bed, he rode into town alone. The saloon was still busy when he arrived. Miners and cowhands crowded around the tables and bar. Adam spotted Prescott immediately, holding court at a corner table with several well-dressed men, likely business associates from Helena or Billings. Ignoring the curious glances from the other patrons, Adam made his way directly to Prescott's table. Evening, gentlemen, he said pleasantly. Mr. Prescott, might I have a word? Prescott's smile didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Northcott, I'm rather occupied at present. This won't take long, Adam assured him, his tone remaining cordial despite the steel beneath. Just wanted to inform you that if I hear one more rumor about Miss Sinclair in town, I'll know exactly where it originated, and I'll take appropriate action. One of Prescott's companions shifted uncomfortably, but the banker merely raised an eyebrow. Is that a threat, Mr. Northcott? Just a statement of fact, Adam replied evenly. A gentleman doesn't tarnish a lady's reputation, and a wise businessman doesn't create enemies unnecessarily. I thought you might appreciate the reminder. Prescott's face flushed with anger. You're a long way from Texas, Cowboy. You might find Montana less welcoming than you anticipated. Adam leaned closer, his voice dropping so that only Prescott could hear. And you might find that some cowboys know things that bankers would prefer stayed buried. Like certain irregularities in how foreclosed properties are auctioned, or how railway information gets leaked to select investors. Prescott paled slightly, telling Adam his shot in the dark had found its mark. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Adam straightened. Just having a friendly conversation. Enjoy your evening, gentlemen. He tipped his hat and departed, feeling Prescott's glare boring into his back. It was a risky move, confronting the banker so publicly, but Adam had seen enough corrupt power plays in his time to recognize Prescott's vulnerabilities. Men who built empires through dishonest means always left traces of their misdeeds. When he returned to the ranch, the lights were out except for a single lamp burning in Rose's bedroom window. Adam paused, looking up at that gentle glow, and reaffirmed his private promise to protect what they were building together, whatever it might cost. The confrontation seemed to have its intended effect. The rumors about Rose gradually subsided, and Prescott avoided both Rose and Adam when their paths crossed in town. But Adam remained vigilant, aware that the banker was likely only biding his time, waiting for another opportunity. That opportunity arrived in early August when a severe drought settled over the territory. Weeks passed without rain, turning the lush valley brown and raising concerns about water access for cattle and crops alike. The Whispering Pines Ranch was more fortunate than most, with its reliable creek and spring-fed pond. Rose and Adam worked tirelessly to keep the livestock watered and save what they could of the alfalfa crop. Their neighbors weren't as lucky. The Harrises lost half their corn already, Rose reported after returning from delivering eggs to a neighboring farm. And the Millers are talking about selling off part of their herd before the animals weaken too much. Adam frowned, calculating water reserves. We could let some of their stock graze the north pasture. There's still access to the creek there. Rose smiled at him warmly. That's generous, Adam, he shrugged. It's what neighbors do. Your father would have offered the same. They extended the invitation to several nearby smallholders, creating goodwill that would serve them well in the coming confrontation with Prescott, though they didn't know it yet. The banker made his move a week later, appearing at the ranch accompanied by Edwin and a man Rose didn't recognize but Adam identified immediately as a lawyer from Helena. "Miss Sinclair," Prescott called as they dismounted. "I've come with a proposition." Rose and Adam exchanged glances before walking out to meet the visitors. "Mr. Prescott," Rose acknowledged coolly. "What kind of proposition?" Prescott gestured to the parched landscape. "This drought is only going to worsen. Small operations like yours will struggle to survive it." "We're managing fine," Rose replied. "For now," Prescott conceded. "But what about when winter comes and you have no hay stored for your stock? Or when your neighbor's desperate cattle break through your fences to reach your water?" Adam stepped forward. "Is there a point to this visit beyond dire predictions, Mr. Prescott?" The banker smiled thinly. "Indeed, I've come to offer Miss Sinclair a solution." He nodded to the lawyer, who produced a document from his satchel. "The bank is prepared to purchase water rights to your creek and pond. You would retain land ownership while receiving immediate capital to see you through the drought." Rose took the offered document but didn't open it. "And why would the bank want my water rights?" "The railway development will require significant water access," Prescott explained smoothly. "We're securing resources in advance of construction." Adam's eyes narrowed. "For how long would these rights be transferred?" "In perpetuity," the lawyer answered. "But Miss Sinclair would be fairly compensated." $500 is considerably more than water rights typically command in this territory. Rose looked down at the document, then back at Prescott. "So you would own the water that runs through my land forever, and I would have to request permission to use it." "The agreement includes provisions for reasonable domestic use," Prescott said dismissively. "Really, Miss Sinclair, this is quite generous given the circumstances." "The circumstances being that you failed to foreclose on her property, and now you're trying another approach," Adam observed, his tone conversational but his eyes hard. Prescott's facade of geniality slipped. "The circumstances, Mr. Northcott, are that half this valley is one bad month away from ruin. Miss Sinclair could use this money to secure her future rather than clinging to resources she can't fully utilize." Rose handed the document back without opening it. "I'm not interested, Mr. Prescott. My neighbors need this water more than your railway does." "You're being short-sighted," Prescott snapped. "The railway will bring prosperity to everyone. Progress requires sacrifice." "Not this sacrifice," Rose said firmly. "Not from me," the banker's face darkened. "You may reconsider when your cattle are dying of thirst because every desperate rancher for 20 miles is diverting your creek." "Is that another prediction?" Adam asked quietly. "Or a plan?" Prescott ignored him, turning back to Rose. "The offer remains open until the end of the month." After that, we'll pursue other options." After they'd departed, Rose leaned against the porch railing, suddenly exhausted. "He's not going to stop, is he?" Adam put his arm around her shoulders. "Not until he gets what he wants or finds it's not worth the fight anymore." Rose looked up at him. "How do we make it not worth the fight?" "By standing together," Adam said simply. "Not just us, but the whole valley. Prescott's power comes from division, setting neighbors against each other, making each person feel isolated in their struggle." That evening, they formulated a plan. The next day, Adam rode to each neighboring ranch, extending an invitation to a meeting at Whispering Pines to discuss mutual aid during the drought. To Rose's surprise, nearly every family within riding distance attended. They gathered in the ranch yard as the sun set, ranchers and farmers who had sometimes been rivals, but now faced a common threat in both the drought and Prescott's schemes. "Thank you all for coming," Rose addressed the group, fighting her nervousness at speaking before so many. "I know these are difficult times and every day brings hard choices about water and grazing." Sheriff Davis, who had also attended, nodded encouragement. "Go on, Rose, they're here to listen." Rose took a deep breath. "My father used to say that on the frontier, no one survives alone. We need each other, especially now." She explained Prescott's offer and his thinly veiled threats. "I believe he's trying to control all the water in this valley, not just for the railway, but to make us all dependent on his goodwill." Murmurs of concern rippled through the gathering. Jacob Miller, whose family had been among the first settlers in the valley, spoke up. "He approached us last week about selling our spring, offered good money, but something didn't sit right about it." Others shared similar stories. Prescott had been methodically approaching every property with water access, offering immediate cash that was tempting during the drought crisis, but would leave them vulnerable forever after. "So what do we do?" asked Sarah Harris, whose family's small farm was already suffering severe crop losses. "We can't fight the bank and the railway." Adam stepped forward. "Maybe not alone, but together we present a different challenge." He outlined a mutual aid plan where those with water access would share with those without, creating a network of support that would make Prescott's divide-and-conquer strategy ineffective. "It won't be easy," Adam acknowledged. "We'll need to coordinate cattle movements, schedule water access, maybe even dig new wells in strategic locations. But if we work together, we can outlast both the drought and Prescott's patience." To Rose's amazement, the plan was met with enthusiastic support. Neighbors who had barely spoken in years began discussing shared resources and cooperative labor. By the time the meeting ended, a committee had been formed to coordinate the valley's response, with Rose and Adam at its center. As the last neighbors departed, Sheriff Davis lingered. "Your father would be proud, Rose. He always said this valley needed someone who could bring folks together." Rose smiled, emotion tightening her throat. "I'm not sure I did much. Adam was the one who saw the solution." Davis glanced to where Adam was saying goodbye to the Millers. "He's a good man. Seen his kind before, carries himself like someone who's been through fire and came out tempered rather than burned." The sheriff turned back to Rose. "You two make a formidable team." "Yes," Rose agreed softly. "We do." The valley's cooperative effort took shape over the following weeks. Cattle were consolidated in pastures with the best water access, with owners taking turns tending the combined herds. Families with failing wells were supplied by those with stronger water sources. The communal spirit extended to sharing food, labor, and equipment. Prescott's response was predictably vindictive. Loan terms suddenly tightened for anyone involved in the cooperative. Supply orders from Helena mysteriously became delayed. But with each obstacle, the valley residents found creative solutions, drawing strength from their growing solidarity. By September, when the first autumn rains finally broke the drought, the crisis had eased but the cooperative bonds remained. Rose and Adam had become natural leaders in the community, their partnership a symbol of the resilience and innovation that had saved the valley. On a crisp evening as leaves began to turn golden, Adam asked Rose to walk with him along the creek. The water flowed strong again, gurgling over rocks and nourishing the recovering land. "I received a letter today," Adam said as they reached a bend where the creek widened into a peaceful pool. "From a lawyer in Austin." Rose looked at him curiously. "Texas, is everything all right?" Adam nodded. "More than all right. Remember I told you about my family's ranch being taken for taxes during the war, of course. Turns out the seizure wasn't entirely legal," Adam explained. "The lawyer's been tracking down veterans with similar cases. There's reparation money available from the federal government, not the full value but a significant sum." Rose squeezed his hand. "Adam, that's wonderful news." "It is," he agreed. "Enough to build something substantial here if that's what I decide." Rose felt a flicker of uncertainty at his phrasing. "If," Adam turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "That depends entirely on you, Rose Sinclair." Her heart began to race as Adam dropped to one knee beside the flowing creek, still holding her hands. "I came to this valley looking for land," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Instead, I found a home, I found purpose. Most importantly, I found you." He reached into his pocket and produced a simple gold ring with a small pearl. "This was my mother's. She made me promise I'd only give it to a woman with her same strength and grace." His eyes held Rose's. "I've never met anyone more deserving." Rose felt tears spring to her eyes as Adam continued. "I love you, Rose. Your determination, your compassion, your unwavering courage. I want to build a life with you not as partners in business but as husband and wife. Will you marry me?" The words Rose had secretly dreamed of hearing for months filled her with overwhelming joy. "Yes," she whispered, then more firmly. "Yes, Adam, I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to pull her into his arms, sealing their engagement with a kiss that promised a lifetime of tomorrows. Their wedding took place on a perfect October afternoon, with the entire valley turning out to celebrate. The ceremony was held in the meadow beside the creek, with Sheriff Davis proudly walking Rose down the aisle in place of her father. She wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered by Sarah Miller and the other women of the valley who had become dear friends through the summer's trials. Adam waited for her beneath an arch of autumn flowers, looking more handsome than Rose had ever seen him in a new suit ordered from Helena. His face as she approached, radiant in white with wildflowers in her hair, held such unguarded adoration that several guests were seen wiping away tears. Their vows, written together over long evenings by lamplight, spoke of partnership, devotion, and the home they would build not just for themselves but for future generations. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that rose from the gathering seemed to reach the mountains themselves. The celebration continued well into the night, with tables laden with food contributed by every family, music from local fiddle players, and dancing under stars and lanterns. Even Prescott's continued absence couldn't diminish the joy of the occasion. In fact, many considered it an improvement. As twilight deepened, Adam led Rose away from the festivities to a quiet spot overlooking the valley. "Happy, Mrs. Northcott?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist from behind. Rose leaned back against him, savoring the sound of her new name. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." "You know," Adam said, his voice thoughtful, "when I paid your mortgage that day, I never dreamed we'd end up here. I just knew I couldn't bear to see you lose something you loved so much." Rose turned in his arms to face him. "And now?" "Now I understand it was just the beginning," he said, touching her cheek gently. "Everything that truly matters was still to come." Rose stretched up to kiss him, feeling the perfect rightness of their union. "To think I once threatened to shoot you for trespassing." Adam laughed. "You're still the most formidable woman I've ever met. Just now you're formidable and mine." As they rejoined their guests, Rose caught sight of a rider approaching from town. To everyone's surprise, it was Edwin, Prescott's clerk, looking distinctly uncomfortable as he dismounted. "I apologize for interrupting your celebration," he said, hat in hand. But I thought you should know immediately, Prescott's gone. A murmur ran through the gathering as Adam stepped forward. Gone where? Edwin shifted nervously. Back east, apparently. Packed up last night and took the morning stage. Left a letter resigning his position at the bank. He hesitated, then added, there are irregularities being discovered in the accounts, significant ones. Sheriff Davis pushed through the crowd. What kind of irregularities, Edwin? Misappropriation of funds, Edwin admitted. Possibly fraud related to the railway investments. The bank examiners arrived from Helena yesterday. He turned back to Rose and Adam. I thought you should know, the water rights contracts he was pushing, they're all being reviewed. Likely to be invalidated. As Edwin departed and the celebration resumed with renewed vigor, Adam pulled Rose close. Seems our friend Prescott wasn't as untouchable as he believed. Rose looked up at him suspiciously. Adam Northcott, did you have something to do with this? He smiled enigmatically. Let's just say I made some inquiries to the right people about certain banking practices. The rest took care of itself. Rose shook her head, laughing. Remind me never to underestimate you. And you remember the same about me, he replied, kissing her soundly to the cheers of their guests. The year that followed brought both challenges and blessings to the newly-wed Northcotts. The railway ultimately chose a route that bypassed Silverpine Valley entirely, focusing instead on the more established mining communities further north. Without Prescott's manipulation, the natural development of the region took a more organic path. Rose and Adam poured their combined resources into expanding Whispering Pines Ranch, implementing the diversification Rose had dreamed of while maintaining the cooperative spirit that had saved the valley during the drought. The new Mrs. Northcott proved to be as skilled at business as she was at ranching, keeping meticulous records and negotiating favorable contracts for their wool and beef. Adam's steady presence and innovative approaches to ranching challenges earned him the respect of even the most traditional cattlemen in the territory. His suggestion to cross their stock with hardier Texas Longhorns proved especially valuable when another dry summer tested the region. By their first anniversary, Whispering Pines had nearly doubled in size and productivity. The small bungalow where Adam had first lived had been converted to a foreman's house, occupied by a capable young couple from Oregon who managed the ranch when Adam and Rose made their occasional trips to Helena or Billings. The ranch house itself had expanded with a new east wing, providing space for the family they both hoped to start. Rose had discovered a talent for architecture and design, poring over building journals and sketching improvements that Adam brought to life with skilled hands and patient attention to detail. Their partnership in marriage proved even more successful than their business arrangement had been. Friends remarked on how they seemed to communicate without words, anticipating each other's thoughts and supporting each other's strengths while compensating for weaknesses. On a warm spring evening, almost 2 years to the day since Adam had first ridden onto her property, Rose sat on their expanded porch swing, watching her husband return from checking the north pasture fence line. Her hand rested on the gentle swell of her abdomen, still barely visible beneath her dress, but containing the precious secret they'd confirmed just weeks before. Adam spotted her waiting and urged his horse to a trot for the final stretch, his face breaking into the smile that still made her heart race. He dismounted in one fluid motion and bounded up the steps to join her on the swing. "How are my two favorite people today?" he asked, placing his hand gently over hers on her stomach. "We're perfect," Rose assured him, leaning into his embrace. "Though your son or daughter has decided that mornings are not their preferred time of day," Adam chuckled sympathetically, "taking after their mother already." Rose swatted him playfully. "I'll have you know I was up at dawn making biscuits while you were still snoring." "Only because you couldn't sleep," he countered, kissing her temple, "but I appreciated those biscuits nonetheless." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the valley in gold and crimson. The creek sparkled in the distance, healthy and strong after the winter snowmelt. Fields that had once lain fallow now promised abundant harvests. In the nearby pasture, cattle and sheep grazed peacefully side by side, a sight that would have been unthinkable to traditionalists just years before. "Do you ever think about it?" Rose asked quietly. "How differently things could have turned out if you hadn't decided to stop that day?" Adam's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Sometimes, but then I remember something my mother used to say about fate." "What was that?" "That some souls are meant to find each other, no matter what paths they travel." He placed his hand over her heart. "I think I was always heading toward you, Rose, even when I didn't know you existed." Rose turned her face up to his, eyes shining with emotion. "I'm glad you found me." "Found you, fell in love with you, married you, and now creating a family with you," Adam said, brushing his lips against hers. "And this is just the beginning." As twilight deepened into dusk, they remained on the porch, planning and dreaming together. The house lights of neighboring ranches twinkled in the distance, each representing friends and allies where once there had been only isolated homesteads. The banker who had threatened to take her land was long gone, his schemes forgotten in the prosperity that had come through cooperation rather than competition. The cowboy who had paid her debt without being asked had become her husband, partner, and the father of her child. And Rose Sinclair Northcott, once desperate to save her father's legacy, had created something far greater than she'd ever imagined possible, not just a successful ranch, but a true home filled with love and promise for the future. As the first stars appeared in the Montana sky, Rose nestled closer to Adam, perfectly content in the knowledge that some debts, like the one between them, could only be repaid through a lifetime of love.